This is the first episode in a new series where I break down the content I turn to when studying a new language. From books to shows and everything in between. And naturally, we're starting with reading. Why? Because reading is hands down the most effective way I've found to build vocabulary and deepen language understanding early on. If you're new to the channel, hi, I'm Nek. I've been studying Portuguese for 7 years. I'm currently learning French as my fourth language, and I hope to move on to a fifth one by the end of the year. In this video, I'll walk you through the book series I always come back to when learning a new language, specifically fantasy series that are not just enjoyable, but perfect for language learners. These aren't just random picks. They're strategic. Each series plays a different role in the learning process, from early vocabulary building to preparing for more complex texts. And even if fantasy isn't your genre, you can use these as a framework to build your own reading list around the genres that you love the most. The first series that I will always start reading when I finish the starter goal of learning 200 words is a manga series called Rave Master. Yes, this isn't a regular book series, but that is what makes it perfect as the first thing that you start reading in another language. Manga is a lot easier to start reading as you don't get all the descriptions that you would get if you were reading a normal book. Those descriptions aren't necessary because you have a bunch of pictures that show everything to you. These images also serves as context that you can use to pick up so many more words than you would have if you were just reading a normal book from the beginning. The series is about a young kid that suddenly finds himself able to use the abilities of a magical sword, and the journey that he sets out on trying to find a way to find all the pieces of Rave that will allow him to put an end to the terror of the criminal organization called Demon Guard. I'd give this series about a 2.5 out of 10 in terms of difficulty, but it is a 10 out of 10 in terms of enjoyability. Now that you've read your first book series, the next one I would read is Percy Jackson. This is the first normal book series that I would start reading, and there are several reasons for it. Reason number one is that it is the one series that I've read more than any other, which means that I know most of what is going to happen. Number two is that the series is written in the first person point of view. Now, I will rave on about this. Yes, I am a teacher, which means that I also have a teacher's dry humor. But yeah, I will rave on about how reading books in the first person point of view is the perfect way to start reading actual books. And it is the perfect transition to go from reading manga to reading a book like this. They introduce a lot more descriptions and filler words than manga, but they're still a lot easier to read because instead of a narrator that sees everything, you will have a narrator that is explaining things from his point of view. And the author, in this case, it's this guy, Rick Riordan. He does such a perfect job of describing it from the main character's point of view, and this makes it the perfect transition between manga and most other books. If you happen to like action-filled books and wouldn't mind being thrown into the world of Greek mythology, together with Percy as he discovers that the Greek gods are still alive and kicking in the modern day USA, then there really is, in my opinion, no better way to continue your reading. I would give it a 4.5 out of 10 in terms of difficulty. Hi there. If you're looking for either a customized plan that is going to work for you, or private lessons applying the systems that I use for my studying, then send me either an email or a message on Instagram. Both of those are linked below. Enjoy the rest of the video. The last book series that I'm going to be reading every time I start learning a new language is a series called Heroes of Olympus. This here is the first book, and this really is the perfect way to follow up Percy Jackson, as it is written by the same author and it follows the events of that series while changing the point of view to a third-person point of view. This means that you get to use all the vocabulary that you just spent all those hours picking up. Now, this series is going to be more challenging since it has a whole lot more descriptions, as is usually the case with stories written in the first-person point of view. But you should now be familiar enough with everything else going on with the story to be able to figure out all these extra descriptions a lot easier than you would have if you had just started off with these books. These introduce the Roman mythology, and you get to experience firsthand how chaotic and just confusing the transition was when the Romans came into power. You also get to notice how all the characters that you got to know while reading Percy Jackson are becoming more mature, and it really starts to feel like you grew up with those characters. Even though the first book technically doesn't really feature Percy Jackson, you still get that. In terms of difficulty, I would give this book series a 7 out of 10. And the only reason why I would ever move from Percy Jackson to this series is that they are so similar in subjects that it just helps to speed up the process of you learning how to read that much more. Otherwise, I would have gone for something that is kind of in between, where it's more difficult than Percy Jackson, but less difficult than Heroes of Olympus. I mentioned in the beginning how you can make this a framework for your own reading list. You don't have to read these books, but these are books that have been translated to several languages. Ravemaster is also available online. It's not the way that the author would have preferred for you to read it, but it's such an old manga that it's kind of difficult to find it otherwise, but it's really easy to find online. So if you're going to make your own reading list based on the books that you like reading, then you have to make sure that they are available in multiple languages as well. It is also always going to be easier to start reading books that you are familiar with when you start reading a new language, because you will pick up words based on the context. I would even say that Ravemaster is easier than 2.5 in terms of difficulty, just because I've read it so many times and I know what's going on. I would also not suggest reading children's books unless these are books that you really want to read. All of the books that I've recommended are amazing for those that are looking to learn a new language. But if you need those first few hundred words that you should have before you start reading, then this video here is going to be the quickest way to achieve that.